Welcome back, everybody. Amanda, you're here with me, of course.
I am.
And
Hello,
you're
Mel.
coming to me live. We're coming to me live from where?
I'm in the Dunraven Arms Hotel in the bar because I'm just passing through and I've never been here before and I just assumed they'd have a lobby, but they don't.
Now, listen,
So I'm
did
going to do my
Dad have
best.
gigs? I feel like that place sounds very familiar. Did Dad gig there?
Yes, you did. And I think it's a big New Year's Eve venue.
Hmm.
But I had never been.
Yeah. Well, listen, so, I'm not long back from my gorgeous trip home to Ireland. And, it's not until I come back that I realize how desperately I needed that break and how much I miss home and how important that connection is to me. Not
Yeah.
just the soil itself. It's a whole experience. Going home, going to the airport, getting on Aer Lingus. We can say anything we want to say. The food has gone shite and the customer service and blah blah blah. I personally love Aer Lingus. I love getting on the big green bird. I feel safe. I feel like I'm with my own. I feel like if it's going to go
Mm.
down, at least I'm going down with my own.
It's so weird, isn't it?
So weird. And
Yeah.
then to come into Shannon Airport, oh my God, just
It's the
Dad.
best.
Dad is
Yeah.
there. I mean, he's literally there on a beautiful big canvas, but you don't see that till you're leaving. And
Yeah.
Amanda's husband Terry came to pick me up and couldn't do enough for me. I'm afraid to actually mention things around Terry now. I'm afraid to say I'd love a cup of tea because he will find a place. Like the cafe wasn't open yet because we landed very early. And Terry came up with 3 solutions. And I said, no, honestly, I'll wait till I get home and I'll enjoy it better when I'm sitting there with my sister. I later made the mistake of asking if there was any chocolate in the house. And he literally grabbed his car keys. And I was like, no, no, Terry, it's grand. Honestly, I'm better off not having it. But I
Yeah.
think, why don't we have a little chat about that week and you and
Yeah.
me and the work that we got to do and the connection that we got to have. I mean, how are you feeling? I still can't believe that so for the listener to know where we're at, we have successfully executed the live podcast recording at the Nina Art Centre, which, um, we kind of organized, as we both agreed, a bit prematurely, with the podcast not even reaching its first year. So we're still very much in our infancy. And I think we were both blown away by the fact that we did it and the
Yeah.
support and the feedback
Yeah.
it exceeded
Yeah.
my expectations.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the support, the way that people showed up for us and the reception that we got and the engagement and participation and the openness, could not have asked for more. Of course, the Nina Arts Centre looked after us. Like,
Oh,
it was
so
just
well.
so amazing arriving there on the day, and the stage was set for us. Because I was expecting that we were going to be doing that. It was set for us, and the lighting was in place. I wasn't expecting the lighting to be what it was,
Yeah.
and it felt really good. When we were in the dressing room and we had a window seeing people crossing the road
Yeah, that was really
coming
cool.
into the venue. Yeah, and it was surreal because, it's usually Dad's gig that we would be, observing people arriving to. Um, so yeah, like 6 months in and we've already kind of like did this, and it was a really interesting exercise in terms of like clarifying
Mm.
what the podcast is about, really like holding it as a real thing,
Mm-hmm.
like really honoring the project as something that doing this, we're committed, and it is, um, it's real and it's worthy and it's valuable. And learning how to communicate that, I wouldn't say learning how to promote it because like promotion is something we've both been doing for years, but it was a very different experience for me promoting this than anything else that I've promoted. Um, I also love the fact that it's a collaborative.
Hmm.
effect. Like I'm really, really enjoying driving a bus that I'm not just a single occupant of,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
That feels
Yeah.
really good. Um,
You know, going back to what you were saying about, looking out the window at the people coming in. And it was so funny because when they were people we knew, and they were mostly people that you knew, and I had some friends show up who I haven't seen in donkey's years. um just amazing to see people coming out because they resonated with something in an episode. Was amazing. But it was when you and I would both see a group of women crossing the road and you'd say, I don't know them, and I'd say, neither do I, and we saw them coming in, and I that made me a little nervous because I was like, oh my god, there's even people
yeah,
coming that we don't know, that we've obviously
yeah,
struck a chord with, and then you have this kind of intense responsibility to deliver.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
And we had a lovely moment as well in the dressing room. Just that, acknowledging that and acknowledging the fact that we're doing something that is so tied into our legacy, and that is quite surreal from that perspective, just as, as two daughters and sisters. So,
but that actually,
oh,
that moment kind of felt like a prayer for me. It
yes,
wasn't, it wasn't a traditional prayer, but just to create a visual, myself and Amanda, came together face to face, grabbed each other's hands, looked at each other, and it was kind of like a mirroring back to each other of all the work that we've done and the belief that we have in each other. And just you're out on that stage, you're not on your own. Same goes for
yeah,
me. Um,
yeah,
but let's talk about, so we go from the dressing room, and Trish, who's a legend over at the Nina Art Center, and we've a big history with Trish,
yeah, yeah. We
you
go back a
know,
long way.
a
Sure, we
long
know her
way.
since we're kids. Yeah,
Oh, and
mm,
she just, even her bringing us into the kitchen for the cup of tea and the digestive biscuit before the show was a massive comfort. And
yeah,
so we could hear the audience coming in, and they're all chit chatting, and we had a playlist that I will say Amanda put together. I was given access to collaborate on the playlist, but I misunderstood the assignment. Amanda said, let's put music in there that's kind of inspiring and uplifting and aligns with the theme, which is happiness. Your happiness is a gift. I thought it was songs that make Mel happy will also maybe make you happy too. So I was putting songs from various musicals, and Amanda listened to it and was like, what's that? So we
yeah,
deleted a bunch of my songs, but we can give you access to my playlist if you're a musical theatre
yeah.
fan. And Chappell Roan's song,
We'll do another playlist called Mel's Happiness is also a gift. But anyway, yes, Pink Pony Club seemed
all of
to
this.
just be the song of the night. Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, we were back. How were you feeling right before you went on?
I was feeling focused. I was feeling confident. I was feeling responsible. I was feeling nervous.
Yeah.
And I was feeling grateful. I was, um, relieved as well. Here we are. There is a murmur. There is great excitement in the room. People are talking amongst themselves. Just that anticipation was real. And yeah, I was in the zone. I wasn't thinking
Mhm.
about anything other than the job at hand.
Wow. So I was in a bit of a different headspace. Um, I I was focused for sure, and I was ready, but I was definitely nervous because for the first time in my life, and I've been on stage many, many times, this was me on stage in a very different way. First of all, I was not in character. So there was that nakedness that I wasn't sure I was comfortable with fully. But, thankfully I have the acting background, and I knew that that would kick in if it needed to. Um, and then sitting in one spot for 90 minutes, um, not moving around a stage and not being in character felt extremely vulnerable for me. Plus, I had a lovely blouse on that I did love right before I went on, until I realized that it was catching in a way that was driving me mad. And I spent most of the night trying to discreetly pull it around the place, but it ended up not being discreet at all. So that kind of played into
Mm.
played into, my nakedness there. But what really brought me into the zone was literally watching you. I
Really?
turned, yeah, yes. I've never seen you more confident or sure that you were meant to be there at that moment saying the things that you were saying. And if we had a video of the night, I would say you can just kind of see me in awe, just watching, going, "Oh, there she is. She has absolutely arrived." I mean, you've arrived before now, but it was very you put me in the zone because I was just watching and listening and saying, "What a delivery." You know? It couldn't
Yeah.
have been more authentic.
It's interesting that you say about the movement because as you're saying that, I'm thinking, wow, yeah, 90 minutes is a long time to sit in one spot. Like maybe we could look at that and maybe movement could be part of it. But anyway,
Mm.
that's a kind of an aside. Yeah, and I was very proud of you because I knew that it was a very different space for you to be in terms of it was a different space for both of us to be in. You are more comfortable on stage, um, and not necessarily, as you said, in that vulnerable capacity. I'm comfortable in the vulnerability and holding of that space that does have some tension in it, um, but not necessarily comfortable on a stage, not being able to see, with the lights coming down and speaking into a room that you know is full, but you can't actually see.
Yeah,
So,
talk about that for the listener, and I'm sure many of you have been on stage yourselves and maybe some of you have not. So,
mm,
how did it feel walking out into that blackness? Because it's literally a
mm,
blackness that you're staring into. Did it feel,
mm.
um, you know, comforting that you couldn't see people yet, or would you have preferred to have seen people and gotten your people situated in your head, like this one's over there and that one's over there?
Yeah, I think that there's several things happening for me at that moment, as in like, well, on reflection, let's say, because in the moment it very much feels like somewhere between deer in the headlights, but also and action. So because there's this walking out into the depth, and that you can't panic, you just can't. Like you have to go, you have to
There is
do
no
it.
exit plan.
Yeah. So the uncertainty is real. It really is because, especially, and something else that I noted as well as it was unfolding, my other senses started to kick in. So I wasn't
Yeah.
able to see, but my ears started to place people, started to, kind of like draw a picture for me of what was going
Mm.
on over here on the left, what was going on. I could hear, people might have been a little bit moochy over here. There was restlessness here. So it was just so interesting how my other senses, well, specifically my hearing, but also physically, I was physically very much um, interpreting the space out there, like I was sensing a lot. Um, Now, the other thing as well is I keep wanting to make the analogy of water. It's kind of like when I was learning to swim, sea swim, and then again in the lake, there is this sense of when you put your head in the water and you open your eyes, you still can't see, you know? And it's just very disorientating. And in the water, what I would do when I was learning to swim, I would instantly come up for air,
Mm.
instantly just like back out, like, oh, no, no, no. So it kind of reminded me of that a little bit. It felt a little bit like diving into water or be
Mm.
plunging into water and just not having that vision um yet, but at the same time being like having to swim. So um and then there was the familiarity in terms of like a part of me was like, this is what it felt like for dad. Do you know what I mean? Like
Mm.
he literally did this every night. And I guess any performer, but of course, I instantly just thought of, I don't know, did I pull something from that or draw some comfort or normalizing? I think that's what it was.
Mm,
I pulled some sense of normalizing from that. Like, this is what it's like, kind of a thing.
mm-hmm,
Instead of freaking out, I was like, no, this is what it's like. Like
mm-hmm.
this is part of it. But interestingly, for me, the hard bit came afterwards, which is
Yeah.
usually how it happens for me. I'm very brave up front. And then afterwards, when I went to bed that night, so we were all chatting afterwards, everything was all that. And then when we got home to the house, I got into bed and a voice just said, "What did you do? What did I do?"
Really?
Yeah. And
Really? Like
then who do
in a
you
judgmental way?
panic? Kind of like a panic. Like, it
Yeah.
was a vulnerability
Mm.
hangover. That's what it was. I just got the vulnerability kicked in then after the fact when there was
I was
nothing I could do
upstairs in the
about it.
meantime singing fucking Pink Bonnie Club,
Yeah.
and you're downstairs dying. Like, what the
I'm
fuck did
downstairs
I do?
having a vulnerability spiral, and I knew as well. I knew enough to know that that's what it was. Oh, here's
Right.
the vulnerability hangover is kicking in. And as I said on a previous episode when we discussed personality and and the Enneagram, I knew that my shame
Shame.
now was coming to the room and being like, "Who do you think you are?" Do you
Yeah.
know? And so it would, because I did something scary and outside of my comfort zone. Shame came in to try and scare me out of ever doing that again because of the vulnerability that came with it. So there was a little bit of that. And then I listened back because we had recorded it and we had done a recording through my laptop and also a backup recording through the sound desk. So all I had was the recording through the laptop and I had not configured the settings correctly. So when I played it back, I didn't get a live feed. What I got was it recorded through the MacBook speakers, which basically just means I might as well have been listening to a phone recording.
Right.
If
Yeah. Yeah.
somebody had
Like someone
just been recording on their
FaceTimed.
phone. Yeah. And then somebody had sent me a video clip as well
Oh,
of us on stage. So, and it sounded like that as well. So it was very much the sound of being listening to myself live on stage. And
mm.
that freaked me out a little bit.
Wow. Yes. Because I didn't.
Mm.
You see, I didn't hear any of that. Have you received the feed recording yet?
Yes, I have, and it you can very much hear the fact that we're speaking into a microphone in a in a stage. There's a stage sound of it, and
Mm.
I had to tweak the settings because it recorded at a very low. So I still have to do some tweaking to get the
Yeah.
recording
But
edited and out there, but it
a
still
relief
sounds
that it's
really
there.
vulnerable.
Right. Gosh, that's so interesting. And
Mm,
maybe when I
mm,
hear it, I'll have a better understanding of
mm,
that. But let's talk a little bit about the audience, the people who came. We don't have to mention
mm,
names, of course, but I was so impressed with the age range was vast. We had people there younger than ourselves, and we had our parents' generation there as well. And
mhm,
I think there was a few standouts for us because at one point Amanda led us through an exercise which was so effective and impactful. And
mhm.
we invited the audience to share anything that they got from that, as much or as little as they wanted to. And we had at least a handful of people who raised their hand to share. What stood out for you the most in that exercise?
Um, well, the uniqueness of doing that from stage, because I'm used to, putting people through an exercise and then getting feedback, but in a circle, in a room, on a Zoom, never from a stage. So actually, one person I met her yesterday, and she was like, it was a bit freaky when the lights came on. So, but yeah, it's just interesting to note that and I felt that as well. Did you feel that in the moment, like when the lights came on, it almost burst the show bubble? Do you
Oh,
know
it
that kind of
did.
way? So,
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
so
And
that was
it is
interesting.
it's like physically quite shocking as well when your eyes have gotten used to the darkness and then that bright light comes on. It's like, oh,
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
it's same in the cinema, closing
yeah,
time, the end of the night at the disco
yeah.
when you're a young one and the lipstick is worn off you. It's,
Yes.
by some young
And
fella.
interesting. So, but as well, it kind of throws the spotlight back onto the audience, which is very much the theme of the night. It was like,
Hmm.
okay, you're all sitting there looking at us being vulnerable. Now it's your turn. And turning on the lights and handing it back, handing it
Mm.
over and asking them to be part of it very much was running parallel to the message, as in like, it's, well, if you want to see change in the world, you go first.
Mm. Yeah.
You do it, like step forward. But when we did turn the lights on, there was that kind of moment of shock and everything else. But people did, raise their hand and participate. And then it became something a little bit more different. And I do like that interactive element. It very much, it's very important actually to me anyway, to have an interactive element and
Mhm.
for, for mine not to be the only voice. I am so conscious of the space that I'm taking up. Do you know
Mm.
what I mean? And I think that sometimes, the interactive part is important because it's a community learning, but it's also a little bit safer for me, for other people to to take up space in the space, that I'm not
And to
just the only
contribute.
one doing that. Yeah.
Mm.
So, yeah, but there was honesty, there was vulnerability, there was, in spite of uncertainty, in spite of the fear of, like, there's nothing scarier than, a microphone in you being shoved in your face, Not that
Mm.
anybody was shoving microphones in anyone's face, but there was a
No,
microphone
I know what you mean.
and
Yeah. Yeah.
we invited people to speak
Yeah.
into a microphone. Um, and
And there was, I know that some people spoke about regret and guilt and sadness. Like I was so proud of
grief.
everybody for bringing,
Yeah.
yeah, grief.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
you know,
There was a lot of,
I,
yeah, the emotions were named.
yeah. Were you surprised that there was a couple of guys in the audience and that I don't know how many of them there were, but two of them spoke?
Yeah. Yeah. I guess I wasn't surprised because I knew a few were coming, but um, I was delighted to hear from the fellas and
Mm.
had made it, we had made a conscious decision, or not a conscious decision, but we up front we kind of like preloaded the evening by saying, we generally speak to a female audience, but like we want to welcome the men here to receive this
Yeah.
message too, because this is about being in a role. This
Mm.
really, this message is for anybody who is trying to uphold a role that might be a little bit of a heavy burden.
Yeah.
Um, it's the male perspective is very welcomed, and I was very grateful to hear from it. And it's reassuring for everybody, when the men speak, it gives permission to other men, and then it gives insight as well to the women who, you know, that wants to hear from the men,
Yeah.
and want to see their man step up in that way.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So many women, so many of the women I work with, a lot of their um, longing is to be met in a space like that by the masculine.
Mm.
You
I
know,
know it.
it's for their men to kind of like step into that emotionally vulnerable space. So it's always a lovely thing
Yeah.
to witness.
Culturally, they haven't been supported in that way.
No.
And it is really nice when you see it happening.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, there was the sisters really, really touched me. We had three sisters who came to the show. They would have been, let's say, the boomer generation, would you say? Maybe not quite.
Yes.
They would have
Oh,
been
there are
maybe
parents. There are
our
parents'
parents'
generation for
age. Yeah,
sure.
yeah. The boomers. And you know, they they came together to see our show. They were big fans of our dads. And him passing left a huge void in their lives. And they picked up our podcast out of curiosity and came. And I imagine they came, you know, almost as an, an honoring to dad as well. And of course, throughout the night, I threw in a bit of comedy, especially because my sister-in-law Claire was there, and Claire is very gracious with me and slagging her and making fun of her. So I threw in a bit of humor as well. And one of the women said, "Ah, you're your father's daughter," and I think that meant something to her. But what was really impressive to me was that I don't think that they came necessarily with the intention of being as impacted as they were. They ended up figuring out some hard stuff during the exercise, and one of the sisters spoke up and, said, our generation, didn't do what your generation does, like didn't explore feelings and didn't show vulnerability. It was more of a generation of get up and get on with it. And, this is your role and that's his role. And so I think it was almost there was a regret over not being able to access that. Um
Yeah.
and I think they were very contemplative, weren't they, after
Yeah,
the
definitely.
exercise?
Very open to the message. And I think as well, probably a little bit um encouraged by the idea that, it's not too late, even though like there
That's
are,
it.
we can't change others, we can't change time, we can't change the past. There are things we can't control, but there are things that we still can, always can, in this
Mhm.
moment, going, and from here on in, it brings it back to the serenity prayer, like, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. So, like, I think that was probably a underlying theme of the night, because the one thing, as we said, that did come from that exercise was people, it was the lament, it was the sadness of having identified the person who didn't, for whatever reason, who didn't have access or
Mhm.
want access to the inner work to do the healing. And as a result, there was the connection that what could have been wasn't. And that's true for
Mhm.
all of us, every single one of us. And accepting that and letting it go is part of the work. And then, you know, not letting it define you is another part of the work, and not letting it define relationships going forward. And, so like it really is almost like it's a parallel process of acceptance and letting go, and then, you know, taking on of responsibility. It was a real contrasting um, space to hold, you know,
Yeah.
to let something go and to pick something up at the same time, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that was a lovely moment, when the lights came on and people shared, and then we brought the lights back down to kind of wrap things up. Um
Hmm.
And, when you said, actually, another funny observation was how uncomfortable I was when you said to the audience, okay, now turn to the person next to you and, just talk things through. And they took the opportunity to talk to each other. And of course, we didn't know what they were talking about. And I found myself counting down the time. And at one point, I grabbed the clipboard and pen and I wrote, how are we for time, or are we ready to move on yet? And it wasn't that I mean, the audience, they could have talked and talked and talked for another several minutes. Um, I think I was more conscious of the fact that, we were sitting up on the stage, just kind of looking around at them talking, and like, and we move on now. We hear
Yeah,
what they're talking about. I got a bit impatient at that point.
yeah. And do you know what else it was? It was also just very unfamiliar as a performer. It's not something that would be done. It's very
Mm.
much like stopping the performance and letting people chat, and then taking the reins back. But also, it feels a little bit like dead air.
Yes, yeah, yeah, that's what it was.
do you
And
know?
I'm
And
I'm a good woman to fill dead air.
well, but that's because you're a performer,
Yes. Yeah, yeah. I
you
do it
know?
in spaces though, and
Yeah.
I've tried to become more conscious of not being the filler all the time and being uncomfortable in the silence, but it's a tough one.
Mm,
How did you feel when you were wrapping up and you finally said, and that's what is on offer here? You
mm.
wrapped it up lovely and you basically said, and that's it. That's what we came to say. And um, there was a lovely round of applause. But then Brad's music came on, which is the outro and the intro to the podcast. And I don't know, there was just this sense of um, accomplishment and happiness. You know what? It was just pure happiness.
What I hadn't anticipated, but even though we were aware of it, and even though it has been an explicit part of our project as sisters, but it was the story underlying everything was the story of us and
Yes.
the healing journey that we've gone on as sisters.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
sharing that story with the audience, it became very real to me in terms of modeling. This isn't us sitting on stage selling snake oil.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. We are
This is
proof of the
us
pudding.
literally, we are proof of the pudding, and we are actually working on a project together
Mhm. Yeah.
as a result of like it was the message demonstrated. Like your happiness is a gift, it spills out just as unmanaged or unhealed pain or trauma or anything also spills out and creates harm. But when you work on it, it spills out and it uplifts others. It has that ripple effect. And the fact that we were on stage together, and then when we hugged at the end,
Yeah.
because that wasn't planned, but it really
No.
was a kind of a letting people in to see that side of this, that there is a depth here, you
Mm.
know? And
And we did not plan this. Like that was not in the outline. That was
no,
something that we discovered in the car on the way back from Jetland when
yeah,
I said to you, I'm so grateful that we can, have what we have now as a
mm.
direct result of, the work that we have done. And even more
You had
specific. Yeah.
you had said to me, because I showed you the exercise that I was doing, and you said to me, "Do you
Yeah.
know you're that person for me?" Because we had asked the exercise about
Yes.
identifying a person whose unhealed stuff, whose lack of inner work or whatever, had been a source of of strain in your life, and it turned out that I was that person for you.
And I asked your permission to share that
Yeah.
in the live because I
Yes.
certainly wouldn't want to. We did laugh about. Imagine if I had sprung it on you and you were like, "I was fucking through you
Excuse
when
me.
I got you off the stage." Cunt. But
Imagine.
so it was that was a huge moment for me even before we got on
Mm,
stage to know that I had permission to talk about that. You
mm,
know, because
mm,
we have never talked about that on the podcast yet. And the fact that
mm.
it was saved for the live and it was really not planned that way at all, that was how it was supposed to unfurl.
I think we had to be in the same room together in order for that to be
Yeah.
fully honored.
Oh, that's exactly it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And that proximity was important. And it very much was almost like, it really was a very powerful healing catharsis for us,
Mm-hmm.
and a demonstration and a modeling for, I hope, the audience in terms of what an amends actually looks like, what a transformation actually looks like. It very much
Yeah.
fitted the mold of amends, because this is a living amends. And we go through
Mhm.
all the motions of there being a fallout, and then there being, a conversation and an apology and a request for forgiveness and the giving of forgiveness, and then the growth going forward, like on both sides, because you also took up the mantle of, it wasn't a passive thing on your side either. It wasn't just about me coming along with some kind of like admission of guilt or confession, and you being like, yeah, you're grand. You had to let go
Mm-hmm.
of the person you knew and
Mm-hmm.
actively choose forgiveness, which I've often thought about if the shoe was on the other foot. because the heavy lifting wasn't just on my end. I have not been good at forgiveness in the past. Like you
Mm-hmm.
modeled that for me. And that was
Mm.
such a gift to me. The fact that you were willing to do whatever work you needed to do to let go of you know,
The version of
the
you.
the version of
Mm-hmm.
me who
Mm-hmm.
had left such a hard impression on you,
Yeah.
had
Yeah.
such an impact, a negative impact on you. So like
Mm-hmm.
that to me was profound as well. I was like, on both ends. It just goes to show you, like, because that has, how many people have we attempted to do that with in life
Yeah.
and it
But you
not
see,
work
that's
out?
it. That is it. Both parties have to be willing to do the work. It is a fair exchange of lifting in different
Mm.
ways, but it's a beautiful thing when it works. And like that, we were able to model that on stage, and then to, meet everybody afterwards. Amanda, how much did that remind you of Dad?
I had
Like, it
not
really.
anticipated that at all.
Oh, so people were coming out. We went out into the lobby, and we were literally just chatting with people, getting pictures, talking about, yeah, how's life since I've seen you last, meeting people we've never met before. And in that moment, and, by no means would I ever compare what we're doing to what our dad did. It's different, but there's a parallel. There is a parallel that we watched our dad for our entire lives greet his audience after the show, to just, he had already given them so much joy and happiness, but he still wanted to go the extra mile to thank them on top of it. So he gave them joy and happiness, and then he came out afterwards to give them his gratitude as well. And
Mm.
and that's what it reminded me of. Like, I felt Dad literally beaming down and just being like, wow,
Mm.
fair fucks he is. Because it went as well as it did, I made, a suggestion, a proposition, I would say, to Amanda to come to Boston and for us to have, a repeat of Your Happiness Is Your Gift with an audience over here, because I have so many, people in my life who are actively doing this kind of work and who would just be so thrilled if we could offer this here, because they're listening to the podcast. Some of them even said, my friend Laurie, I'm surprised she didn't show up. She was like, oh my God, I wish I could just get on the plane and go with you. And I know that, it'll be a great benefit to anyone who comes along to do the night with us. So we're very excited to hopefully have something to announce around the first year of this, podcast anniversary in Boston, Massachusetts. Um,
Yay.
Yay! So it's ongoing. This is just the beginning of,
Yeah.
something that is growing and growing. Do you want to say anything else about the podcast before I jump in to tell the listener what else I did in Ireland that I had just an absolute ball doing?
Well, the only thing I have to say again, if I haven't, said it clearly enough, is to thank our listeners, thank our supporters, our neighbors, our friends, our cousins, everybody who has just kind of given us the encouragement and the support to do your thing, and then who were, it's really lovely to be seen and celebrated, like to for people to show up and allow you to shine. It's something that I really, that's kind of like what I'm coming away with is, as much as I want to offer and as much as we have to offer, I still have work to do to take that space up and without actually having you know, a shame spiral in the aftermath. So as we always say, we're still a work in progress. But yeah, there's definitely something unfolding here that I don't fully understand myself yet, and we don't need to,
Mhm.
but it will reveal itself. It will reveal itself. It always does. But I do definitely feel committed to this, and yeah, we'll just keep on going and showing up.
So overall, gratitude for everyone and everything. And I just got to have the most gorgeous week at home. And it was the simplest of things that I enjoyed the most.
Yeah.
Going out onto um, the balcony of the house and sitting out there every morning with a cup of tea and the sun was shining. It was a glorious week of weather. And I'm looking out onto Loch Derg, and the mountains. And it literally looked like a backdrop. And I
Yeah.
soaked it all in. And, I just got to spend some quality time with myself, with my sister, with my cousins, and,
With
with a couple of
Ireland.
friends. Huh?
With Ireland.
With
With,
Ireland, yeah.
as you said, with
And
God. You said God is
oh, I did. I
God is
felt
in
like,
Ireland.
honestly, I genuinely feel closest to God when I'm in Ireland. And I wonder if most people who've emigrated from their countries feel that way when they go home. I imagine that they do. And
Yeah.
by God, it doesn't have to be the long haired fella with the beard. It could be
Yeah.
whatever your form of
Gandalf.
God. Yeah, whatever your form
Yeah.
of God is. So it was just fantastic. And my own boys, got along with their lives in Boston with Franco and did their thing and got on great. And, it's healthy as a family to take time away from
Yeah.
each other too.
Yeah.
And then I got the lovely greeting when I came back, and I said, Jesus, I should go away more often. But anywho, to wrap up, that's basically how the week went, and that's how our first live event um went and how we felt about it. And it was definitely the beginning of something else that is yet to come. So we hope you'll stick around for the ride, because God knows where we could go with this. And if it didn't go any further than where we are now, I'd be over the moon. I just love getting to connect and chat and all that good stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Excellent. So, yeah, thank you everybody for being here and for listening and for all of the things that we've said. And we will be back next week with some great guests coming up. And yeah, stay tuned. Share with your friends. Tell people. Help us grow the audience and listenership. And sure, we will see you next week. Bye.
Bye.